And now next we've got something that's a little bit more different, but sort of a very, very interesting company that's been going on for about the last 4 years that Rob is now working for, Rob Deeming. So Rob is a UK native, ended up in the States somehow, I'll let him give that story there, ended up at Harvard Business School, and then transitioned to be one of the first 20 employees of Gilt.com. How many people are aware of Gilt.com and what Gilt does? So a good percentage of you. Basically, it's a luxury flash sales site in the US that was founded by Kevin Ryan, a multi-time entrepreneur who sold one of his first businesses, DoubleClick, if you're aware, to Google for a couple $1 billion, and then started up this and has got lots of other subsequent companies. And Rob has been there since basically 20 employees. Now it's 900 employees, over 300 or $400 million a year in sales, and now is setting up the UK subsidiary of jetsetter.com, jetsetter.co.uk, and has an amazing kind of story about that and that kind of experience. So over to Rob.
Okay. I'll put it on first. Great. It's very nice to meet you all. Thank you so much for having me. I'll start by saying it's a real pleasure to be at Imperial today, having been rejected by Imperial when I applied to university. So it's a real pleasure to be in these hallowed buildings, and I'm very jealous of you all and the position that you have. I thought I would do a couple of things today. There's really 3 things that I'd love to share with you all. I'd like to just tell you very briefly about the choices that I've made in my career and where I've gone, because I think one of the key things to emphasize is that there's many different ways to find yourself in entrepreneurship, and I've taken one pathway, and I'd love to share that with you. I'd love to tell you a little bit more about the project I'm working on now, which is Gilt and our moves in the UK, because we've been lucky to be very successful, and it's an interesting story to tell. And then thirdly, I just put together a few things that I think I've learned over the last few years about entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur, or in the entrepreneurial world now, for 8 years, and there's a few things I've learned along the way that hopefully might be quite helpful to share with you all. So I started off my career at a company called Bain, which is a management consulting firm. You may have guessed that because I'm using slides. Pretty much the only thing you learn in a consulting firm seems to be the production of slides, but anyway. So I started off with Bain straight out of university. I studied engineering as well, although mechanical. So I started with a company that was about 3,000 people, and I was there for about 5 years. And I moved from there to Apple, which was at the time about half that size. It's a lot bigger now. And worked for them in their product team on the iTunes store. I was actually working on the initial prototypes of the iPhone. And I decided that after 5 years of consulting, really I wanted to be in something that felt a little bit more technology oriented. I love music. It seemed like a natural fit. I was excited about moving to California, so I moved out to the West Coast to spend some time with them. And then after that, I went off to business school. And I spent 2 years studying business out in Boston. And I decided to go back to Apple during my summer internship, so I spent a bit more time there. But I figured that I didn't really want to go and work at Apple in the long term. There were some things about Apple that I didn't like, and I didn't like the idea of not being able to control and run something that felt like it was a little bit more my own. And so in my second year of business school, I did a field study with a professor at my university on social gaming and internet gaming. And after about 3 months of the project, my professor very thoughtfully said, if you'd be interested in running this in the long term, I'd like to give you some seed capital to start and operate. So he gave me a check for $50,000, and I got going on a real business plan and actually building the site and getting it up and running with a couple of co-founders. And when I was supposed to be out doing my finals at Harvard, I was in Europe trying to raise money for the business. We raised money from a VC in Luxembourg called Mangrove, which is part of, well, sort of a part of Accel, which is a big VC here in London. And it was the last time, and the only time, I was ever able to raise money from a PowerPoint presentation. We had no product at all, we had nothing. We had a few slides talking about what it was we intended to do, and someone very thoughtfully gave us a check for $2 million. I don't think you could do it anymore, but it was nice to go through that experience at the time. So we got our check, we started that business, we grew it to about 20 people, we moved the whole thing to Barcelona, we had a development team in Barcelona. And slowly but surely, over time, what we were working on came together, the ideas crystallized, and we were able to do some interesting and cool projects working alongside companies like Facebook and Bebo and some of the other social networks here in Europe. But over time, the work that we were doing wasn't progressing the way that we wanted. Funds started to dry up, and we ended up selling some of the assets and then getting jobs for people who worked at the company with the BBC here in the UK. So first startup tried, 2 years down, sort of we'll give it a B minus, I would say, in terms of our grade. I moved from there back to New York to work for a company called Outside In. At the time when I joined, it was 2 people. I was the third person through the door. Outside In is a local news aggregation platform, so we used to aggregate news and try to create local newspapers for every town and city around the US. And over a period of about 2 years, we grew that from 3 people up to about 25 people. I raised about 4 rounds of institutional financing along the way. Our big investor was Union Square Ventures in New York and Fred Wilson, who I still think is one of the smartest investors operating today. We grew that to about 25 people, and I sold that 3 years ago to AOL, who put it into part of their patch business. And from there, I ended up at a company called Gilt. And Gilt in the US is a big and established company now, but it's a company that doesn't have much of a reputation here. So what Gilt does is it operates in the flash sale model, and the flash sale model is something that was really pushed by Von Privé in France. The idea with flash is that we work with luxury clothing brands to help them get rid of inventory at the end of their cycle. So most big brands end up with clothes left over at the end of the year that they're not able to sell, whether it be to department stores or through their own retailers. And they come to companies like Gilt to help them move through that product, and we'll give them a very low price for that product and put it on sale on our site, usually at a 60 to 70% discount. So we sell luxury products at 70% off, and that's the real premise of what flash sales is. I was relatively early there. I was 25 on the team, or in the top 30 of the team, when we started, and we've been very lucky with the growth that we've seen. So over the last 4 years, that company has grown up to be, it's actually just under 1,000 people now, 950 people. Still predominantly based in the US. We have a small business in Japan. But really to have seen the way that that has developed has been quite interesting. My role there is really to start new companies for Gilt, new businesses for Gilt. When I joined, we sold men's and women's clothing. We're now in 14 different verticals. And I've been responsible for launching 6 or 7 of those verticals over the last few years. Most recently, I'm launching our travel business, which is called Jet Center here in the UK. So I'm actually back in the UK, having been away now for 8 or 9 years. I'm back in the UK to be focused in London for a while. So that's a little bit about what I've done. And I guess the message that I want to leave with you here from this slide is really that, you know, I became an entrepreneur when I was 28. And I didn't have a clue that that's what I wanted to do when I was 22. And now there is nothing else I would consider doing. And so don't worry about what age you are or what stage you are at in life, because I think that there's no right time to become an entrepreneur. It's when it feels right to you as an individual. So don't feel like it has to be something that happens now or something that happens in 5 years. Just find the time that is right for you, if it's the right thing for you to do. And I'm glad that I found it when I was 28, and I'm very glad that I'm doing it now. And I'll tell you that for me, it was spending 2 years in education with a lot of time to think about things and think about what I really wanted to focus on, that really cemented for me that entrepreneurship was something that I wanted to be thinking about more. So let me tell you a little bit more about Gilt. So we talked about this sort of flash sale model. So what does flash sale really mean? So as I say, we're selling luxury products, luxury clothes typically, but also now homewares and fashions, and we're selling local services and food, all at a heavy discount. And we offer this great value which creates affordability for people. We have limited availability of our products, so it's only really available for a short period of time. All of our sales start at midday each day. At midday we might be selling Gucci, we might be selling Prada, we might be selling Chanel. And we have products available for a short period of time, and that drives aggressive competition amongst our member base. We have high shareability, so what we do is it's naughty, it's a little bit untoward. It's not the way that people should be spending time at midday each day, but we all want to do it, and we all want to share it with each other as well. So we have high shareability in what we do, and there's a real thrill to what we do. You know, we're online shopping, but we really think of ourselves as being online entertainment. And for those of you who haven't spent time on the site, I definitely recommend spending some time and really getting to the core of what it is that we do. It's a really interesting model that I think is going to really expand into the UK over the next couple of years. So when we started, we really started with, as I said, women's and men's clothes. So luxury discounted fashion. And this is a picture of our homepage and one of the sales that we run with a young brand called Chandler Jewelry. We started very early, after about a year and a half, with a brand that we call Jet Setter. So this is just the same model applied to travel. So we work with luxury high-end hotels, like the hotel in Rivington in New York, and we sell rooms in those hotels for 70% off. Again, there's limited availability. You have to act quickly. The sales are usually only live for 24 hours or 48 hours. You act quickly, you make your booking, and in return you get a 70% discount on whatever it is that you're buying. So we started. This is the businesses we're in today. So having started with 2, we're now in 14 different verticals. So men's and women's clothing as well, but we also operate a children's business. We have a gifts business. We've now expanded into some new categories like homewares. We have travel. We now sell food online, high-end luxury food online. We sell full price clothing as well. We typically have worked in the discount space, and now we're selling full price through a brand called Park and Bond, which is a menswear brand. We have a business in Japan which operates many of the smaller businesses in the environment there. And so we've expanded out pretty dramatically, as you can see, over that time. This is a home screen, the home screen of our Gilt City business, which, for those of you who are familiar with Groupon, sort of feels a bit more like an upscale Groupon. Same kind of thing. We're selling local services, great discount on local services, but at the high end. We're selling food now, meat specifically on this page, clearly. We're selling homewares, so this is our homeware site now. This is what our home brand looks like. We're selling homewares and bedding and furniture and so on. And now we have full price men's, let's say, on the Park and Bond site. And I wanted to share with you some statistics about Gilt. So bear in mind, so 4 years ago when I joined, we were 20 people, and we ran 2 sales a week. And if we were really lucky, we might get 1,000 orders across those 2 or 3 sales that we were running. So today we have about 5 million members in the US. You have to be a member to join Gilt. Essentially, that's a really clever, not that I would say this to our investors, but that's a really clever way of us capturing email addresses. And email really is a driver of what we do. So we have to have a way to be able to communicate with people. And capturing an email is a really good way to do that. We sell about 900 different brands on the site today. The lowest price item we've ever had is $10. We've sold something for $29,000. Interestingly enough, that was a pearl necklace, and we sold it on our iPhone app. And our jewelry category is non-returnable. So someone spent $29,000 on a pearl necklace that they couldn't return using an iPhone.
Question on that.
Sure.
How much was the discount on the 20?
Yeah, that was a $95,000 pearl necklace. Discounted to $29,000. So it was about 70% off. We have about 950 employees now worldwide. Our fastest sellout sale was 72 seconds. That was a Christian Louboutin shoe sale. A lot of you are looking at me blankly now, and some of you are looking at me like you know what that means. But Christian Louboutin is a very high-end French shoemaker. We had 3,000 pairs of his shoes, which we sold in 72 seconds. We have a waitlist function on Gilt, so if something is not available, you can add your name to a waitlist and we'll let you know if more becomes available. We took a look at the waitlist about an hour after we'd started that sale, and if we'd have been able to fulfill just the orders that we had on the waitlist, Christian Louboutin would have sold an additional $13 million worth of shoes that day. Last year, in the whole of his business, he sold $30 million of shoes. So we would have done 33% of his business in an hour. So we're making a big difference to the way that brands think about selling products and about engaging with an audience online. And for many brands that are not great at thinking about the online space, we're able to help them think about how it is that they can operate in that way. We have about 1 million people shop every month on Gilt. And we see about 150,000 visits between 12 and 1 every day. And remember, all our sales start at 12 o'clock. So we see a big spike, and I'll show you an interesting chart on that in a second. About 50% of the products that we sell out within 1 hour on the site. And in an average week now at Gilt, we will sell 200,000 things, and we process 200,000 orders. And we manage and operate our own warehouse facility in Louisville, in Kentucky now, that processes all of those orders for us. So it's grown enormously in a very short space of time. This is a chart that shows our site traffic through the day and how it peaks and troughs. And so this is 12 o'clock, so this is when all of our sales go live. We see about 98% of our traffic within about a 5-minute period around. So for those of you who are engineers, computer engineers in the audience, you'll know that this creates a big challenge when you're trying to build a stable platform. And the peak visits that we're seeing, so at this time of midday on a busy day with good sales, we might be processing 1,000 visits a second, something like that. And it's an incredibly difficult engineering problem to solve. To be honest, for 2 years we were behind that problem, and we crashed the site a lot. The Louboutin sale I talked about a moment ago, we sold out in 72 seconds. In 74 seconds, the whole site went down. But this is really something that we have to spend a lot of time thinking about. I think after 4 years we're there now, we understand how it works a bit better, and we have a lot more of a stable platform. But just to see something that looks like this is just kind of fascinating for us. And there's no way when we were sat there with 15 people in the early days that we ever anticipated that it was going to look anything like this. This is an interesting chart that just shows you user engagement with the site like Gilt, alongside some of the more popular media sites like Yahoo and Facebook and so on, and then some of the e-commerce sites. And what we're trying to show here really is that if you think about it in terms of visits per month per visitor, actually Gilt is a lot more like a media site, like a content site, than it is like an e-commerce site. Again, something we didn't think about too much. We thought we were selling clothes, but actually it turns out that people come to us to be inspired, to consume content, because they're interested in engaging with brands, whether it be in the travel space or in the fashion space. And so people think about us a lot more. In fact, for an average visitor, people visit twice as much Guild as they would do Facebook, which is a pretty extraordinary statistic for us to be thinking about. And as I say, just to summarize what I'm working on now, I'm here launching JetSetter in the UK, so I would certainly appreciate you all checking it out and spreading the news. It's jetsetter.co.uk, and I believe that we'll bring the rest of the Guild business here at some time in the next 9 to 12 months. We'll start with Guild City probably, which is local services. We started with JetSetter, by the way, because JetSetter is a virtual business. We don't sell anything. It's a certificate. We're selling travel. Our closed business, obviously, we need to think about logistics, about warehouses, about selling, delivering things to you. It's a lot more complicated. So that makes sense to do. JetSetter first will come with Guild a little bit later. So that's a little bit of what I'm working on now. And I wanted to just share a few lessons, which were supposed to be one at a time. But anyway, you can have them all together. So a few things that I've learned since I've been at Guild, and that we've learned as a business. Firstly, there's plenty of room for multiple players in most spaces online. So just because someone's doing something in the space that you're thinking about, don't let that put you off operating in that space. We have 2 really big competitors in the US who are doing what we do, and we have lots of niche players who are looking at one of our individual businesses, whether it be homewares or travel, and doing that really well as well. This category did not exist at all in the US 5 years ago. And this year, between the players that exist in the space, in the US alone, they'll do $2 billion in revenue. That's $2 billion that just didn't exist 5 years ago. And so there's plenty of room for everyone to compete in that space, and there's plenty of room for people to be able to command and build great businesses in that space. So don't be put off if someone's already doing what it is that you're thinking of. It doesn't have to mean you can't succeed. Secondly, finding an efficient way of acquiring users is a really, really great way to be able to start a business. So for us, 4 years ago, we pioneered what was called the referral model. Effectively, it meant that if you recommended a product to our site to a friend, and they started using our site, we would reward you for that. Put it simply, if your friend came in and bought something, we gave you $25. And we had lots of users early on who made a lot of money by recommending this service to their friends and accumulating credits in that way. It was an extremely cheap and effective way for us to be able to add members, and as a result, we have 5 million today. And if you look at those 5 million members, 80% of them point back to the very same 200 people that we told about the business the day we launched. We sent an email to 200 people, and those 200 people have now led to 4 million members on Guild through the referrals through their networks and then on down the chain. So find a good way to be able to acquire users for your business or acquire members for your business, and then you're halfway there. If you have a passionate user base, figure out what else you could serve to them. I was having this discussion before we came in. You know, we thought long and hard about it, expanding our business internationally, and it took us 4 years to get over here. The reason for that is that we have 5 million people in the US, and it's a hell of a lot easier to think about more things to sell to the 5 million people you have already than to think about trying to go and build a new list of 5 million people. So if you have a user base who really like what you do, think about more things that you can do for them. What else can you do to serve them? What other products can you sell them? How else can you think about engaging with that base to improve your relationship with them, to deepen your relationship with them? It's something that's worked very, very well for us. This is more of a personal opinion. I don't believe that from the commerce world, and I'll speak very specifically about the commerce world now, I don't think Facebook is going to drive commerce, but I believe mobile will. I don't think that commerce on Facebook is going to be particularly successful because I don't think that people go to Facebook to buy stuff. I think they go there for a whole different set of reasons. And I think if some sites try and accumulate all the different activities that people engage in online, it's not necessarily going to be successful. We have a Facebook store for Guilds. You can transact, buy almost anything that we sell on Guild right there on Facebook. It's been a complete failure. Doesn't do any business at all. We hardly see any purchases made through that platform at all. And I think it's because people are just not there to buy things. Mobile, however, completely different story. So on a weekend, our mobile applications, we have iPhone and iPad, are about 25% of our business. And so on an average weekend in revenue terms, right now, we would be running at about, we'll do about $10 million worth of sales on a weekend. So 25% of that is coming through mobile. That's a huge amount of revenue to be booked through iPhones and iPads. One other side note on that, we built iPhone, iPad, and we also built Android apps. Android apps are about 50% of our downloads and about 2% of our revenues. So if we had our time again, we wouldn't have bothered building Android apps because we have lots of people using our products using our services online on their phone, on an Android phone, but no one buys anything with it. And so I don't know what the longer term message is from that, but iPad, iPhone, and the Apple iOS platform is really the future for us, I think. Finally, don't be afraid to make big decisions in businesses. You know, if you're working with a big business, or sorry, if you're working in business, sometimes you're going to get faced with big decisions. You have to take them on aggressively and make decisions quickly. We had a business called Guilt Fuse, which was our contemporary women's business. So we were selling slightly less high-end brands to what was a younger audience. And it wasn't working out. It wasn't the kind of product that our audience was interested in. We couldn't make the economics work because the price points were a bit cheaper. And we had to make a big call and we closed down that division. It was 50 people. And we found most of the jobs in other parts of the business, so we didn't lose too many folks. But it was really hard, having spent a lot of money investing in the brand and getting that up and running and really investing to make it work, to make the call that it had to go. But we made the call that it was the right thing to do, and we're a more successful business because of that. So don't be afraid about making some big decisions. And then just 5 lessons from me and things that I've learned as part of sort of my journey. Education, I think, is a great time to be thinking about a startup. I don't think that everyone has to start a business coming out of university or coming out of graduate school. But at the same time, you will never have more time on your hands to be able to do a few things. Firstly, engage and indulge yourself in ideas that you're thinking about and really work through what that means. Engage with colleagues and friends who might share those passions and talk through your ideas with them and have them work with you on developing them. Find really good resources in the form of professors and in the form of doctoral students and people around who can give you advice and input, and in my case, money. And there's an infrastructure around you which is just very hard to replicate in other forms of life. So education really is a great opportunity, I think, to think about starting a startup. Vertical doesn't matter, and I really, really believe this. As you've noticed, I know nothing about fashion. I don't really know very much about jet set or either, about travel either, and it doesn't matter. As long as you're passionate and engaged in what your business does, it doesn't matter so much what the vertical is that you're operating in. I think most people can learn most verticals in a pretty short space of time, so don't let that put you off if there's something that you really feel strongly about. Related to that point, you should only really work on stuff that you believe in. Passion is very easy to spot, I think, particularly among investors. So find something that you really, really believe is going to work. The reason I went and joined Guilt, having done startups of my own, I took a step back and I said, all right, I'm going to work for someone else. And I did it because I saw this e-commerce model and this way of selling online. And I felt really strongly that there was something there in that model, and that was the way that e-commerce was going to pan out. I felt really strongly about that. And the fact that we were selling clothes or travel or food didn't matter to me that much. I cared about the model that was underlying to it. And in 4 years, I've been really lucky to develop a really deep expertise in that. And it's a model that really has worked. And I'm glad to be someone who knows a lot about it. And so be passionate about what you do, and only work on things that you really believe in. Fourthly, I'd say always make sure that you're learning something, because none of us are ever too old to learn, and there's always more stuff to learn. You know, I am now on the board of 4 early-stage startups, 2 here in Europe, 1 in the US and 1 in South America, and I do that because it helps me to stay engaged at the really early stage of startups. You know, I work in a company with 1,000 people now. I'm almost back where I started. I effectively work for a corporation. But I want to stay engaged in that early stage, and I want to understand what's coming next. You know, this flash sale model is a great model. It's been around 5 years now. It's definitely not the new thing anymore. And I want to stay engaged. And a good way of doing that is always recognizing opportunities that you have to learn, whether it be in things that you do or from the people you surround yourself with. And then finally, be really aware and know what you don't know. Not everyone can be aware and conscious of everything or can be good at everything. It's impossible to do that. So recognize what your weaknesses are and surround yourself with people who complement what it is that you do and are really good at that stuff, so that together you can form the right teams and together you can solve problems, because it's very difficult to do it all on your own. That's everything from me. Thanks very much.